following program is brought to you by your friends at Podcast One. Welcome to RJ Bell's Dream Preview. Weekly winners from his Wiseguy Roundtable. Broadcasting from the pregame.com studios in Las Vegas. Here is RJ Bell.
NFL edition week 10 with my Wiseguy Roundtable. To my right, the bettor, Steve Fezzik. To my left, the bookmaker, Matty Holt. I'm RJ Bell. And guys, what a show we've got for you. And I say that every week because it is a dream, but this one's special. We got pros versus Joes, like we usually do. We got two derivative bets, meaning not only the typical sides and one total, but things like first half, first quarter, bet like a pro with these guys. And now it's new, and it's going to be every week. The dream teaser of the week. One from Fez, one from Matty, one team each in the two-team teaser. We've got three best bets, but one of them, for the first time ever, is a crossfire. Imagine that, a best bet from one of the boys and a crossfire from one of the other boys. But first, we always start Fezzik versus the world. Why do we say that? Because Fezzik puts out his power rankings for the world to see. In my opinion, the sharpest NFL rankings in the world from Vegas. And then we have Matty disagree with him. And two disagreements by Colin Cowherd this week. And we're going to hear from Colin on one of those. First, though, Matty, disagreement from you. The Texans and the Rams are playing, and you actually think Houston is underrated in Fezzik's rankings. Fez, let's start with you. Where do you have Houston?
Houston's number 27 in the NFL.
All right. And you actually think, Matty, that they're underrated? Explain.
So I think last week was what we call in the business the dream crusher week for Houston, where you lose your starting quarterback. He goes out. Tom Savage, who you already benched this year, has to come in. The whole team probably goes through a little bit of a because they're starting to play better football, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And things again didn't go well last week. And although they had a chance to tie the game or win the game at the end with a touchdown and an extra point, they didn't. They failed to do it.
This is why the disagreements between the pros are very, very interesting. Let's get to the game. We've got this Texans team getting 11.5 points at the Rams. And this Rams team, and by the way, this is also a public pounder. 94% of the tickets so far, the bets on the Rams. 94%. Now that is the public pounding a game. Let's start with you on this, Matty. Lean or like?
I lean toward Houston, and this is one of those games where we haven't seen a lot of sharp money show up on Houston, but this is absolutely normal at this time of the week. We record this on Wednesday night. This is normal because normally in a game that's already moving this heavily toward the favorite, the sharp money's going to wait because they want to get the best number. So they're saying, why am I going to take 11? It went to 11.5, then it went to 12, then it went to 12.5. Hey, I want to get 13. That's kind of a key number. Maybe I could even get 14. So in games like this, where the favorite's moving up, and up, you tend to not see the sharp action come in until the last minute when they can get the best number possible. So I'm not surprised we haven't seen sharp action yet on Houston. Look, Houston's going to normalize this week. They still have Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins, a good running back core. The weapons around Tom Savage are good. With a full week of practice, you have to assume he's going to get somewhat better than last week's dream crusher performance where they came out with no effort in the first half. I like the Rams. I'm getting more and more sold on them every week, but there's no way I want to lay almost 2 touchdowns with the LA Rams.
11.5 right now, biggest favorite for them since 2002 in the franchise. Forget LA, St. Louis franchise. Rams, biggest favorite since 2002. Fez, just for some context here, you've only got 5 teams in the NFL ranked ahead of the Rams. The Saints, the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Patriots, the Eagles. So you believe in the Rams, I think, as much as anyone, it would seem. Explain to me your rationale, because when the season started, and obviously we didn't know, right? You had them 4.5 points worse than an average NFL team. Now they're 3.5 points better. So an 8-point upgrade. Why?
2 reasons. One, Goff, obviously much, much better than we thought. We were talking about how it wasn't an NFL quarterback. Now it looks like he might go to the Pro Bowl. So the Rams are a scoring machine. Second reason, they had a very good defense. They had good special teams, but they were in St. Louis and they relocated to Los Angeles. And I think that relocation with all the frequent flyer miles, they traveled more than any team. They got tired. They got worn out. And then third, of course, Sean McVay, the coaching upgrade has been enormous for this team.
Okay, so lean or like on the game?
Lean to laying the points minus the 11.5. I'm that down on Tom Savage.
Okay, after a game and a half. Wow. I always thought Savage's problem was his durability, but I think when he's healthy, he's going to be all right. I do think the O-line, though, being so weak, and now they've traded the left tackle without not a non-mobile quarterback is a problem for the Texans.
And I do think that the Colts have the worst defense in the league, arguably, and the offense only got 7 points with Tom Savage last week.
And I'm on SB Nation every Tuesday, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, nationally on their network, and with Fred Fowler from Houston, ESPN Houston, and we do an hour recapping the prior week. And actually, there's been such a positive response to that it's now running Sunday morning. They're replaying it. I think it's 10 a.m. Eastern across the country, and obviously your time zone would be adjusted. So that's a pretty good list. And if you like it's a little deeper dive than you would expect from a national show, but I benefit from Fred's insight on the Texans. And he also said he believes these D-backs have been exposed. And Fez, I think I've heard you say this because that rush isn't there. The rush has been there for years with J.J. Watt. D-backs look good. Now that they're having to cover for an extended period, don't look so good. So like you said, big disappointment with the Texans defense. So recapping, we've got a crossfire, but it's only lean, so it's not a real one. Rams Fez, Houston with Matty Holt. Next game. Now, this is our second disagreement, and this is Colin Cowherd thinks you have the Jacksonville Jaguars way overrated. He actually doesn't have them in his top 10, and Fez, you have them number 6. Now, the next one, we're going to have Colin Sound on one, and he's going to explain his position. But on this one, he wasn't, he didn't even have this team in his top 10, so he didn't say anything about them. But you got Jack 6, so make your case.
Yeah, so statistically, believe it or not, the Jacksonville Jaguars are the second best team in the NFL in a yards per play perspective. They outgained their opponents by almost a full yard per play, and it makes sense. That defense is absolutely awesome, and the offense can run the ball. The weakness, of course, is Blake Bortles. They've been ahead in a lot of games, so he hasn't had to throw the ball very much. And when he does throw, it's a little bit of a surprise, and that's benefited them. But if you look at this Jag team, 5-3, their losses, 2 of their losses are very excusable. They played against the Rams, good team, at home, completely dominated the stats, gave up 2 special teams touchdowns, lost 17-27. Couldn't come from behind, it's true, but statistically, they won that game. And they played at the Jets, another pretty good team in the Jets. At the Jets, they went ahead 24-20 at the very end of the game. Penalty, holding, called it back, tie game. Jets win a coin flip. This team actually could be 6-2 or 7-1.
Okay, but if they were, and you were and everyone thought they were top 5, you'd be the one saying those coin flip games don't count either way. You can't have it both ways.
We'll give them one
when they win the game,
flips.
you can't say, oh, they could have lost, but then when they lose, you can't say, oh, they could have won. It's either way. Those games are supposed to be a half a win.
Well, when they win their games, they've had some convincing wins, like against the Steelers.
All right, I got it. I would say maybe one. I've never given myself the dream song because it's so sharp. I mean, let's be honest, I should. I've gotten a lot of emails about that. I can't show anyone those emails, but I a lot of them. I'm going to let you go first, Matty, because there's a 1 in 100 chance you're going to say the same thing, and then I'm going to come over the top. So lean or like on this game?
I actually lean to the LA Chargers here. And I think some of it for me has to do with the amount of special teams and defensive touchdowns that this Jacksonville Jaguars team just continues to pile up, every single week. I want to jump on Jacksonville harder, but I just can't. The one thing I will say, Jacksonville Jaguars, 6.3 yards per play on offense last 3 games. For all those people that say, oh, their offense isn't doing anything, their actually yards per play on offense last 3 games have been amazing. On defense, they are averaging a 3.9, but there's something about the Chargers, the way they're playing. 5.6 yards per play. The offense isn't broken, hasn't been all year. And the defense, 4.8 yards per play allowed last 3 games. Significant upgrade from how they were playing earlier in the year. I think off the bye week, travel going to the East Coast won't be an issue. I think the Chargers plus more than a field goal is a bargain.
Okay. And that buy on the East Coast, I think, is interesting. Now, check this out, guys. Lean back. Open your minds. Forget about tracking your bets or, Steam or any of that. I want you to open your mind up here. Imagine we're back in the 60s in The Deuce. Oh, wait, that's a good show. David Simon's new show from The Wire. All right, Jags have the best passer rating yielding in years. So their defense is stopping the opponent's passing as good as any team in like 5-7 years, if you go by quarterback rating. And they're sacking the quarterback. So this is the Jags defense over 12% of dropbacks. So they drop back about 1 in 8 times is leading to a sack. That's as good as anyone in many, many years. So we can say this against passing teams, Jags are really good. And especially if they're throwing from behind the opponent and they know they're going to throw, pin the ears back. Okay. And what's been the result of that is, and by the way, we're talking about that 12.2. No team in the last 5 years has been better than 10%. So this is so much better than any team. Now check this out. All 5 of the Jags wins are by 16 points or more. So this makes sense. When they get the lead, they get to stop the pass because they're really good at that, and they pin their ears back, and they get that extra good rush, strip sack, whatever, boom, blowout time. But here's the thing. If they do get the lead, they're one of the best grinders you're ever going to see. And I think in-game, and we don't talk about in-game much, but, that's fascinating. But here's the flip side, is when they aren't in the lead, or if they're behind, which inevitably is going to happen, no matter, doesn't matter who you are, they are horrible because Bortles can't throw worth a lick. And in the games where they've been behind, they haven't come back. They haven't had any comeback victories. They either lose big or they win big. Now, they've won more big, so give them credit. They're above average team. So here's my point. I think this is a team that you sit and wait until if they get up 10, you bet them in game the minute they get up 10. If they get down 10, you bet their opponent in game. And I've never seen a disparity where, like, the Patriots up 10 or down 10 are about the same. I think the Jags up 10 might be the best team in the NFL, and the Jags down 10 might be the 28th best team in the NFL.
And look at game week 2 against was the Titans that they lost by about 30. And once they got down 10, they were hopeless. I think you should give yourself some dream music.
You think so? Fez, you say that, Matty. I need it to be unanimous.
Yeah, all right.
All right?
I'm in dream music.
Did you like that or not?
I did. It was good.
All right. So to me, I think it's hard. It's almost like, why bet the game?
Good. It was freaking great.
All right, Fez. I'm letting you, Matty didn't come through. Let's be honest. But, oh, wait. I hit him to be square. That doesn't work. All right. Here it is. Yay. Matty, the first time you get that music, you smile like you ate, Cheshire Cat. But somehow I was going to get it one. But Fez, you're the master of the in game. Do you agree with that?
I agree strongly, and you backed it up with a lot of stats, and the history goes ahead and supports that as well. One thing I haven't mentioned, in my opinion, I'm passing this game because although I'm very high in Jacksonville, I am also high on the Los Angeles Chargers, that I think when they're on the road especially, I think are going to be a really good bet in almost all their road games because they're undervalued because they have no home games this year. I think they're an above average team.
And don't we still consider Jacksonville to be one of the bottom 6 home field advantages in football?
I'm just about to upgrade them. They were. I only gave them 1.5 for home field. Now I think it should be 2.5 because I checked in with Ross Tucker, did the game in Jacksonville, and he said, Steve, I've never heard that stadium as loud as it was this past Sunday.
That's good info. Good info. Steve, now we're with Podcast One, and Ross Tucker is also, Steve does you're a guest on his show, a steady guest every week, and that's something worth checking out. Okay. So to recap, we've got Steve with a pass, though he is higher on the Jags than Colin, for example. But I think you're a little high. Right. I think that they've been in so many of their ideal situations. I got a feeling that's skewing things.
Well, their ideal situations when they're blowing people out, which they've done a lot.
Fair enough. But let's look at strength of schedule and then we'll move on. That's going to be an interesting stat here. So we got Jacksonville, 19 strength of schedule. So fair enough. But again, look at their turnovers, right? So Jacksonville on turnovers is +7. So they're the second best or third best team in the league. So you get a couple of turnovers, you get ahead.
Unsustainable with Blake Bortles, who has been a turnover machine.
But now someone else could say, but what was it, +4 against Pittsburgh, right? So maybe you take away that game, it was fairly even. But if the Jags didn't beat Pittsburgh, I don't think we'd be looking at them the same way, even though their record would be pretty decent still, right? So if Jacksonville didn't beat Pittsburgh, they'd be 4-4. Would we be looking at them near the same?
Yeah, but they did beat Pittsburgh by 100.
Yeah, well, because of the turnovers. See, guys, it's science, or it's art. It's not science. Good conversation, though. Next game. Now, this is Colin's disagreement, and this time he thinks Fez has a team very, very underrated. Let's hear from Colin.
Number 9.
I'll tell you something. I'm going to put Washington in, and I think I may have them low. They beat the Rams, and they beat the Seahawks, both on the road. And this running back, Chris Thompson, I think he's the best-kept secret in the National Football League. Only player in the league leading his team in rushing and receiving yards. They have a real pass rush. I think they're very well coached by Jay Gruden. Washington's 9. I probably have them low.
All right, Colin, at 9, Fez, where do you have Washington?
Right in the middle at 15. They're middle-of-the-road pack NFL team.
All right, make your case.
Oh, I think it's easy. The O-line is in complete and utter shambles. So when they get their guys healthy, I would agree with Kyle that probably they should be number 9.
You agree with who?
Colin.
Oh, I thought you said Kyle. You were thinking Kyle Shanahan.
I agree with the herd that they should, that if those guys were healthy, but they're not. And let's look at that Seattle game. They couldn't move the ball at all. The Blair Witch Project or whatever they're calling Blair Walsh missed 3 field goals for Seattle. And that's what kept them in that game. That was really a phony, fortuitous win. Hey, all the credit to Kirk Cousins.
Oh, there he is. When the win goes the other way, it's a phony one.
Well, I give a lot of credit to, I think, Kirk Cousins' time to move him up.
It should be a half a win either way. But I agree with you. What wise guys do, I think, exceptionally well is understand these teams are dynamic based on injury, and it's not just the big name injuries. And you'll see, Matty, you see it behind the counter as much as anyone. A team will get bet like crazy by the pros week 1, 2, 3, and then there's a couple of injuries, and lo and behold, they're betting against them the next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And especially cluster injuries, not just to your point, big names injuries, but cluster injuries, especially to the offense and offensive line, defensive secondary. Because
they're hugely impactful, but typically the market doesn't account for them. So some of the pros do, but the market overall, I think, under accounts. So let's say this disagreement is probably a matter of semantics. I think Colin's right that if you spanned out the rest of the year, that the Skins should be maybe around 9, but this current team this week, I think is closer to 15. So speaking of that, Fez, let's talk side only here for now, because we actually have a surprise big play on the total coming up in about a minute. But Fez, leaner like on the side, and let's define it. The Skins are a 1-point home dog, Vikings favored coming into Washington.
I lean to Washington, although I have the Vikings 2.5 points better. I think you got the free roll going here, where you got the number 15 team in the NFL that might suddenly get better if we get a couple of those linemen back who are on the injury report right now. 4 of them are on the injury report. If they get healthier, then suddenly Washington would have really strong value. If not, you got a fair bet.
But if they got healthier, the line would move, right? So in a way, this is a great example of when to bet early, when to bet late. I think in almost all cases, you should bet early, because whatever you don't know, no one else knows either. And it's better to get your bet down early because you're beating most of the sharps, because the sharps get real involved. When do you guys up your limits, Matty?
Wednesdays.
So if you bet before, a lot of sharps are waiting and not showing their hand yet, right? Because they want to get those big bets down.
Yeah, I think for us it's Wednesday at noon. So before then, you're right. A lot of times, as long as the game's not moving or doesn't look like it is, obviously if a sharp wants to play 20 dimes, he doesn't want to play 5 on Tuesday. He wants to get all 20 or 50 or whatever it is on Wednesday.
So why let the sharps shape up the line come the upped limits, get down early? But I think there's a rare case to wait. And the case to wait is if there's a specific piece of information that you think you either can predict the way it's going to go better than the market, or you think the market is going to misprice that information in a way that hurts you. Let's think about those two scenarios. This is a good teaching moment. Imagine that the market is pricing a game like it's 50% that this player is going to play. But for whatever reason, you've got insight. And again, obviously it could be inside information, but it likely won't be. But you've got insight. You think there's an 80% chance he's going to play. Okay. Well, then the question is which team you're betting, right? If you're betting the team that's going to benefit from him playing, well, you play early. If you're betting the other team, you wait, let the line move when the news breaks, and then you play against that move, right? So that's scenario one. If you can predict the uncertainty better. But number two is if the uncertainty, once it's defined, if you think it's going to be mispriced, either to your favor or disfavor, that might make you want to wait and let it be mispriced to your favor and then take the extra value.
And also, it's not like there's going to be a memo that goes out to every sharp bettor. Hey, two of the guys for Washington are going to start now on the O-line. This is one of those situations where it'll move the line, but it'll be slow. It won't be big news like Des Bryant is out.
Yeah, but if you're looking to play this game seriously, you want to make sure on Twitter you've got a channel or a list, they call it, of the Washington beat writers and whoever might break it first, and you should be checking it. And I mean, if you're serious.
And you should have time to get down before the line moves. It'll move, but it won't be immediate.
So on the game itself, Matty, lean or like? Or you pretty much, because you like the total here.
Yeah, I just like the total.
All right, so let's get to it. So guys, typically, we have our three best bets at the end. But we're going to change it up a little bit here because we had our order. Matty got a little late breaking info, and he said, actually, I like this game best. And we want to give you his very best bet. So we're going to give an early best bet here. Matty Holt.
I'm taking under 43 on this game. If you have to lay 42.5, I'd still take it under then. I really love this total. Look, Minnesota's allowing 3.8 yards per play their last three games. They haven't allowed an opponent to score more than 17 points against them this season since week 1 against the New Orleans Saints, who only put up 19. No opponent has scored 20 or more against Minnesota this season. And for that vaunted Washington Redskins offense that we were talking about, 5.5 yards per play on the season, but last three games, only 4.8 yards per play on the season, showing that the injuries have had a down effect on the Washington Redskins offense here. Washington's defense, though, continuing to play well, got a couple of guys back. This feels like a game to me where I don't understand if you can't score 20 against against Minnesota in this game, how is it going over? Because Minnesota doesn't have the offensive firepower, and I feel like Minnesota might be a little more conservative this week. Teddy Bridgewater just got named active today. A lot of people assume he's coming back. Obviously, he's not going to start this week, may not start the rest of the season, but Case Keenum's going to be looking over his shoulder just a tiny bit more now, knowing that if he has a 3-interception game or if Minnesota loses 2 in a row, the fans are going to be chanting, Teddy, Teddy. I expect this one to be really low scoring.
Under 43, 42.5. Fez, agree, disagree on that one?
I agree strongly. I really like this one. I look at just the pure math. Because if you look in terms of a yards per play, Minnesota has an elite defense. Everybody knows that. The perception is Washington has a below average defense. I just updated my numbers, but they've got an average defense on the yards per play. If you look at the offense, Minnesota has pretty good offensive numbers. But remember, with Case Keenum, without their running back that went down early in the year, they really are a slightly below average offensive team. And clearly, Washington is an elite offense when everyone's healthy. The whole team is injured. They are a below-average offense. You add it all up, the defenses on both sides have the advantage against the offenses.
And to put it into perspective, Minnesota's offensive yards per play is only 5.1. When you look at the elite teams in the NFL, they're all well over 6.2, 6.3. So Minnesota, maybe, I'm with you. I think they're actually a slightly below-average offense.
Minnesota, number 15 yards per play, and on offense. And on defense,
the season, last three, only 5.1 yards per play.
5.5 on the season. And on defense, though, they're number 2.
Yeah, 3.8 yards per play allowed. I mean, and no team has hit
last
20.
3, right? Because on the season,
3.8 yards per play last 3.
Yeah, they're 4.6. Okay. Now, guys, you might think that's it for that game, right? No. Fezzik's first piece of the teaser. So we're going to have the dream teaser now every week. Fez is giving you one team. Matty give you the other. And as necessary, I'll tie break or whatever. As necessary, Fez, teaser.
We're going to tease Washington up from the +1 up to either +7 or +7.5. Like them both in a 6 or a 6.5 point teaser.
So it's give us the lay prices on each.
So you're going to lay, in most places, you're going to have to lay $1.20 on a 6 point teaser, minus $1.30 on a 6.5 point teaser. I love getting the 7.5. I got to tell you. The key here, I think, is Matty just made a great case for the under. Each one of these points becomes more and more valuable. Minnesota is not the type of team with Case Keenum that they're going to be able to extend the lead. Kirk Cousins is an awesome quarterback when you're behind. We saw him 1 minute march down the field, got you a touchdown against Seattle to win the game. If you're down at the end of the game, down 10 points, he should be able to get you in the back door also.
So you don't have any say on this, Matty. Do you like that?
I agree. I always like going through two key numbers.
Yeah.
And let's face it, I mean, there's some books that if you try to do advantage teasers where you go through two key numbers on both sides, they will actually charge you $1.30 instead of $1.20.
Don't play at those places.
That's right.
My advice in general. It seems like there's a lot of 1.5. I mean, we're taping on Wednesday afternoon. There's 1.5s out there, aren't there? Isn't there? Yeah, to me, I'm grading this a 7.5. If you can get 7, I'm not playing it. I'm going to be playing these teasers every week. So 7.5, baby.
And a key concept in terms when to bet, when not to bet. Bet that now, because who cares if it goes up to 2.5 and you get 8.5 or 7.5? It's the same thing. But if you lose that 1.5, now you're not getting 7.5.
Asymmetric risk, Faz. I've taught you pretty well. Well, at least the words. You knew the logic. All right, next game. This one's the only game that doesn't have a clean bucket. We're going to call this baby, How Good Are the Saints? Because the Saints are getting lots of love. Right now, Fez, you only have 3 teams in the NFL better than the Saints. The Steelers, the Patriots, the Eagles. Think about that. Starting the season, you had an average team. So a 4-point upgrade. And we've got the Saints on the road, favored by 3 against the Bills. A Bills team, Fez, you've been sour on. And last week, it looked like you were right. Did not play well. Lean or like?
I lean to the Buffalo Bills. Really good spot for them. They had the horrible game against the Jets on Thursday, so they had 10 days to go ahead and get ready. The weather's going to be decent, but it's going to be in the 40s. The Saints, I love the Saints. But the book on the Saints is you want to lay it on the dome where they just lay it on people. They struggle in the elements oftentimes. It looks like the point spread tax finally caught up to this Saints team that has been a juggernaut.
Matty, lean or like?
I agree. I lean Buffalo in this one. This was probably my weakest lean here, though. I was hoping to get a little bit worse weather in Buffalo. I mean, the history has shown that Drew Brees and the Saints team do struggle outdoors. It doesn't look like the weather is going to be very bad for this game. Mid to high 40s, light wind, and no precipitation expected. So we're not going to get any weather to help us out here. And look at these New Orleans Saints yards per play numbers last 3 games. The last 3 games, New Orleans Saints, 6.6 yards per play on offense, while only allowing 4.5 yards per play on defense, for a difference of 2.1 yards per play. In the NFL, 2.1 yards per play differential, that puts you at the top of the class.
Now, how much do you worry? Because I'm always worried about 3 games. The public, if anything, if I had a list of the disparity between the season yards per play and the last 3, so that'd be easy. I could do. Okay, so you have so if you look at the teams with the biggest disparity, I'm looking to play against the positive numbers, and I'm looking to play on the negative numbers, because I figure the bias of the public is they tend to overreact to what they saw most recently, and I think the 8 or 9 games across the season are much more telling.
I agree with that. I actually have last 3, last 1, home away, full season. But the problem is in the NFL, the whole season's only 8 games. So, some of
home or away, you mean?
I mean, so far in the season, some of these teams are only 8, 9, 10 games max. So, teams change drastically. Hey, what did Houston look like early in the season, middle of the season now? What did the San Francisco 49ers look like? Some of these teams changed. The New England Patriots, worst defense we'd seen in history through the first 4 games. Now, all of a sudden, they're back down to still being last, but it being a much more respectable last. I think the last 3 is also an important gauge of what's happening lately with a team.
I agree, but I'm just worried when those results if the results don't show on the scoreboard, I think they're interesting. I want to play on the positive. If they're shown on the scoreboard, I think they're at least going to be accounted for, if not over accounted for.
Yeah, the Saints are awesome, and everybody knows it. Yes. That's why we're paying such a premium here. Let's look at these Saints, not just the last 3 games. They open up at Minnesota when Minnesota was at full strength and a Super Bowl contender with their running back, with their quarterback. They lose that game. Then they play the Patriots. They lose that game. Those are both very forgivable losses. Since then, 6-0. The last 2 times that a team, it doesn't happen very often, lost their first 2 games, won their next 6, those are both Super Bowl champions.
But they can also tell us stories in the case of the New Orleans Saints, a very young defense coming into the season with low expectations, 5.3 yards per play allowed in the season, only 4.5 yards per play allowed the last 3. Why? Because their defense, their young defense, is playing better.
Now, when it comes to Twitter, and
his Twitter handle is @RJ in Vegas.
Thank you, Stephen A. When it comes to Twitter, I am very stubborn. Even if I'm wrong about something, if people are too aggressive about it, I'm going to wait a while before I admit I'm wrong. I'm going to admit it, but I'm going to wait a while because bullies, they don't work with me. I can't lie. But I'm scared to not talk about this topic. Fezzik, you got so many happy people. I guess you're the underdog, right? Everyone loves the underdog, not betting, but in life, I guess, because you seem to, you're like the genius that gets a little, bullied on the playground. Talk about bullies, I guess. Matty's bullying you sometimes, I think some people believe. I'm not judging. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying. But you guys made a bet. Matty won the first week. He was celebrating. But it was almost like The Color of Money. I don't know. They're playing that a lot on HBO, I think it is. I love that movie. Roger Ebert actually gave that a thumbs down. It was the first Scorsese movie he ever gave thumbs down to. But when they play that Warren Zevon song, and his hair was perked. One of the great scenes, I think, in movie. I love it. I've watched it probably 5 times in the last couple months, just, flipping around. But what happens with pool hustling? Faz, you were never a pool hustler, were you?
Yeah, I do know that the art of the dump is to make it look like you're trying to make the shot.
There it is. Just missed that bank shot just a little bit, right? Okay. Well, you just sat there in the $20 bet. And then when Matty was celebrating, and he was, let's be honest, and you said, hey, let's 5 times the bet. That should have been a warning sign. But, Matty, you jumped right in. How'd it turn out?
Well, I lost, and I paid right up when I walked in. Happy to pay, you know what I mean?
No one's questioning that you paid.
But part of the reason we went to 5 up is because you wanted on board for 20, and then the math.
But we could have easily went to 40. Yeah. You didn't have to go 4X yourself.
Admittedly, I don't know why.
So, Matty, do you want to buy out? Do you want to just give Fez a couple hundred and just buy out?
Absolutely not. I feel like I'm still a favorite.
So, if Fez wanted to go to 200, would you go?
No.
Now, this is interesting. He feels he's a favorite, but he must not feel he's a prohibitive favorite, or he's surely
he
would go to
dime a game, right? Okay. I think we've exposed the truth, a little bright light on the truth. Now, somehow, because I respect Matty, and he's got that tight professional haircut, I thought he knows what he's talking about. I jumped on. I got misled. Why would I go against Fez? But luckily, Fez and I have a special deal. I don't settle up till 5 dimes.
Oh.
So right now I'm down 20, so we're on our way.
I have owed you more than 5,000 in the past.
And here's what I have to say about it all.
Okay, you can owe me.
So Fez is letting me owe. So, all right, Twitter, we talked about it, and we'll be talking about it every week, I'm sure. I don't feel too good. Next game, public pounder. This means the public's just pounding the heck out of it. Cowboys, 92% of the tickets so far. A 3-point underdog at Atlanta. Matty, you actually have your derivative bet. So that's one of the things is every one of our experts, Matty and Fez, give a derivative bet, which is first half, second half, all that kind of stuff. Let's go with the side first, and then we'll get into the derivative. Fez, lean or like?
Lean to Dallas. I just have them rated as the better team. I'm worried Des Bryant.
So 3 home field.
Yeah.
Better team. It really gets that simple. Better. Who's the better team, and what's the situational edge?
I don't have a situation edge. I've got an injury concern. Obviously, I don't know if Elliott's playing. Probably Des Bryant has an ankle injury, but I got the Cowboys 1.5 better. If I got a team 1.5 better, RJ, and they're catching 3 on the road, I'm going to bet it every time.
All right, Matty. I said on various radio appearances that last week Atlanta was the wise guy play. It's like the comics comic. It's like it's not the most popular play, but the comics that understand comedy like this certain comic. Well, I thought the wise guys really not the big syndicates, loved Atlanta. They were a 2-point underdog against Carolina, and it closed, what, a 2-point favorite, right? And it went all the way to 3?
All the way to 3 on Sunday everywhere.
So here's my question. It's going to be an open question. Yards per play is a great stat. Now, we can all debate how much you pass and run, and there's complexity there because passing teams gain more yards per snap. But my theory is there's a disadvantage associated with turnovers. So if you look at turnovers and yards per play, you probably got something. Also, I think strength of schedule matters. Well, let's look at Atlanta. Their turnovers are -4, so you could say, okay, maybe they're throwing a little more than they should be. All right. Their strength of schedule is 11, though, so they're, better than average by a clear, handful of teams. And right now, their net yards per play is number 1 in the NFL. So how many yards do you gain on offense every time you snap the ball? How many yards do you give up on defense when your opponent snaps the ball? That net number, Atlanta's the best in the NFL, 1.1 plus 1.1 yards per snap on each shot. Last year, they made the Super Bowl. They were plus 1.1. So we now have over a year and a half where they've had exactly plus 1.1 last year and this year. In theory, they're as good of a team this year as last year. And obviously with Dallas being one of the top teams in the NFL and Atlanta laying 3 here, the wise guys still believe in the Falcons. Are the Falcons as good as last year? Or are these numbers missing something?
And interestingly enough, during this current losing streak that the Falcons are on, their yards per play on offense for the season is 6.2. But I went back, I had their last 3, 6.2. You go back and look at their last 4 games, 6.2 yards per play on offense. Their offensive yards per play has not deteriorated at all, but it is not equating to points on the scoreboard.
And typically, that's red zone, that's turnovers, which tend to be a lot of luck. We've talked about red zones being 75% luck. So think about that, and Fez is jumping in here, is if you have your full field stats and there's a big disparity to the red zone stats, typically in the long run, the red zone is going to move towards the full field stats. Fez, do you agree with that? And what do you specifically think about Atlanta?
Yeah, I agree that it's going to go ahead and regress, and there's been they've been unlucky this year. They were probably fortunate last year. I do think this team's a 20-20 team. They moved the ball between the 20s. The play calling was Sark.
So it's not 75% luck in the red zone for Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta's
Why?
the exception
it's either
to the rule.
scheme or personnel. Which one do you think it is?
It is scheme. Some of the play calling is beyond troubling. I think I'll use one example. It's 4th and 1, and they run a jet sweep to Gabriel. And I think this was against New England. And they get stuffed, lost 4 yards. And it looks like New England knew what the play was to occur. And that's just not a play I see any NFL team ever run, probably for a good reason.
All right, Matty, this is a good segue. Talking about Sarkisian in the first and second half splits, your derivative bet.
I like Atlanta first half here. I think if there's ever a time where Atlanta has to come out and make a statement, it's now. And Steve Sarkisian understands that he's under pressure. It's not just on this show. It's not just sharps that are saying the scheme here, the game plan is bad. He's getting called out by the general media now. And I feel like they lose again this week, he's probably gone. I think this is the week they come out fired up at home. That new stadium's really loud. I give them credit. Their new stadium's great. It's loud. I think they're a top 7 home field advantage in that stadium, especially with a winning football team. I think they have to come out strong this week against Dallas. I like Atlanta first half.
Okay, so Fez, you like Dallas, at least you lean that way, right? Do you agree, though, that if you could have second half over first half with Dallas, do you think Atlanta has any edge in the first half?
Normally, I would say yes, but there's one problem and a big problem with the bet. Garrett of Dallas, when he wins the coin toss, he almost always takes the ball. And Atlanta, when they win the coin toss, almost always defers. No way I'm betting on a team that isn't getting the ball to start the game.
Fez, I'm giving that to you with no begrudgment, like Matty Holt would, right? It's like, that was good. And Fez, I know you don't like Fez. Here's the thing. Fez is as sharp as they come, but there's, I don't know if the number's 5, 6, 7, 8. There's other people that sharp out there in the world. You just never hear them because they never want to share any of this. And Fez, and I'll be honest with you, that was one of our, tugs and pulls at the beginning, is you wanted to hold stuff back. I said, you owe it If you're going to do this, do it. The only time Fez will hold something back is if it doesn't have any general interest, right? We talked about your parlay cards. That doesn't have general interest. This kind of first quarter, all the stuff you do that's unbelievably sharp, doesn't have a lot of general interest. So you kind of gave us something there. You guys track who takes the ball, who doesn't, and all those first quarters, guys. If you're betting those derivatives and you don't know that, well, that's why Fez is Fez. Great stuff there. All right, next game, public pounder number 2, Bengals Titans. Titans at home, favored by 4.5. 86% of the action. 86% on the Titans. Bengals off a number of disappointing performances. AJ Green is playing as of Wednesday, expected to play. Matty, you actually like this game.
Yeah, I like the fact that, look, the Bengals were a smaller underdog against Pittsburgh and against Jacksonville that they are here against Tennessee. I don't think anybody would have Tennessee ranked higher than either of those two teams right now. I mean, while Cincinnati did get hammered by both Pittsburgh and Jacksonville last week and was probably fortunate to win against Tennessee, it still goes to the points that they were getting so much love for so long, and now all of a sudden everyone has completely jumped off board. AJ Green probably should have been suspended. He wasn't. I like the fact that he showed a little bit of fire. They still have weapons out there, and this Tennessee offense just isn't quite firing on all cylinders last week. Probably fortunate to get that 3-point win last week at home versus Baltimore. I think this is going to be another close game probably, and I like Cincinnati.
Fez, agree, disagree?
I agree. I lean Cincinnati. I think Tennessee is an overrated commodity. Several reasons, one being their strength of schedule. They played a cupcake schedule. Second easiest ice show in the NFL.
So let me look. So we use the Jeff Sagarin numbers, and we're talking about Tennessee here. Tennessee is number 31 with Sagarin, yes.
Further, I'm not certain that Mariota has healed completely from his hamstring
Your speculation
injury.
was the bye would help. So what you saw in the game last week has you still questioning it?
He looked improved. He didn't look 100%. And now DeMarco Murray, he doesn't look like he's even at 80%. I think he averaged 2 yards per carry, and this is a ground and pound offense. If I can't have Mariota and DeMarco Murray running the ball, how are they going to be covering, especially as a favorite?
Now, total's 40.5, so expect to be low scoring. But, I mean, do we look under? Especially, I wish A.J. Green wasn't playing. Last week, there was 20 snaps without A.J. Green on the field. The Bengals scored or gained 23 yards. 20 snaps, 23 yards. Fez, you did a video last year, A.J. Green, most valuable player in the NFL, non-quarterback, might still be the case. No one's talking about it, but.
Absolutely, and you could make the case the first half went over just barely with the Bengals, Jacksonville, then A.J. Green went out. Maybe that's why the game last week went under. That's why we're getting such a low total. Hard to go under that.
I think the Titans' offense has regressed, right? And the theory is with a young quarterback, it's supposed to get better. I don't think that's happening. Okay, guys.
It's at least stagnated because it certainly hasn't gotten better. And I was with Fez coming off the injury. If this offense was ever going to get going, it was Mariota, extra time, should be healthier now, should be more mobile. Yet their offense has stayed the same. In Cincinnati, for all their offensive woes, still third in the league in yards per play allowed at 4.6.
And if you actually look at Tennessee's yards per play, last year on offense, they gained 5.7, this year 5.3. And considering they have such a poor strength of schedule, you would have to think they've regressed. At least I think that's a good bet. By the way, all these yards per play, I put it out, a sheet that takes a lot of time to put together on Twitter at RJ in Vegas every Thursday, right around kickoff of the Thursday night game. And it has the offense, the defense, the net, last year's numbers, the year-over-year arithmetic, turnover margin, strength of schedule. To me, this is, we call it the Wiseguy one-sheeter. It's not the only stuff that matters, but on a one-sheeter, Faz, what do you think?
It is the one tweet that you send out each and every week that I read copiously and be sure.
I'm not sure that's a compliment.
And
you read the other ones, just not as closely.
I don't get printouts and take them to the bathroom with me.
Wow, that could be a sound drop. I like it. Next game, pros versus Joes. Let me get Huey lined up. Let's make sure I'm ready to hit him with Huey. I hope I can't lie. I like when they're square. It's fun, and you do too. Be honest. We got the Dolphins. We got the Panthers. Panthers now favored by 9 I mean, this Dolphins team is 4-4. They're playing a Carolina team that's 6-3, and they're almost getting double digits. A total disrespect for the Dolphins. So many close wins since early last season, and the Sharps just believe those are half wins, those close wins. And imagine if Miami only won half those games, their perception with the public would be so different. And the wise guys, they know. So a very low-rated Dolphins team. And the pros, on the Dolphins in this spot, 77% of the money, but 66% of the tickets on the Panthers. Leaner like Matty.
I lean toward Miami here, and I use them as my half of the teaser this week on the Miami Dolphins, going through 10, through 14, all the way from 8.5 up to 14.5, or if it's 9, you're getting 15. Either way, through 2 key numbers there. Low scoring game, so I expect that in a game where there's expected to be that few points scored, having more than 14 is a big time bonus. And we talk about, hey, what do you make of splits on yards per play this season? Carolina, one of the worst home versus away splits on yards per play in the entire league this year. At home, only 4.4 yards per play this season on their offense at home, while on the road, 5.2 yards per play. Carolina's offense hasn't been very good at home this year. I'm going to go ahead and lean Miami and put them as the second half of our dream teaser.
Miami plus 14.5. Washington plus 7.5. The first dream teaser. I'll be betting it. Fez, we know the most advantaged teaser is actually up through 3 and 7. If you look at the history and the math, MTI has done a lot of work on that. The going from a dog to a 7.5, 8.5 point dog is better than going from an 8-point favorite down to 2 or whatever. But going up or down through 3 and 7, most valuable. My gut feeling is going through 7 and 10 the other way. I guess both ways would be second, and then going through 10 and 14 would be third if we were just looking at the math of the value of the numbers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I personally only tease when I go through the 3 and 7 corridor, but there's a lot of value picking up a 10 and picking up a 14.
Because the theory is if the line is correct, if God made the line and the line is correct, and you can go through 7 and 3, it's almost a slight edge, even if you're laying 120, even if you had no opinion on the game, correct?
Absolutely.
With the teaser that's not going through 3 and 7, you've got to like the game a little bit. And then it's getting those numbers that are worth it. Plus, you like the game. Is that how you think about it, Matty?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure that 7 and 10 are that much more valuable than 10 and 14. I think they're pretty close. 3 and 7, obviously, clearly the number one most priority one.
Well, see, so 7's worth about 11 cents, right? And I mean, 10 and 14 either of those aren't worth 11, is it?
Oh, 14 actually is worth as much. The reason people don't think it's worth as much is because when the games pick them, it doesn't land 14.
Yeah, so if you do the analysis, you have to look when the line's between 13 and 15, how often does it land 14? And same thing with 3, right? The key is if the line's 2.5, 3, 3.5, how often does it land 3? And that's almost 10% of the time. It's like 9 and change. It lands 3.
And it's not a coincidence. Maddie and I are both picking games to tease that have lower relative totals where those points are worth more.
Excellent. And especially as you get up over 14.5. All right. So the teaser's in, guys. Let's cash that baby.
I do have a derivative bet.
Oh, wow.
On this one.
I mean, the action here. Go ahead, Fez.
All right. I'm going to play the first quarter under 7.5. The line is not up yet. I imagine we're probably going to have to lay maybe about minus $1.35.
So where don't you lay it? Do you lay 40? Do you lay 45? Where?
Up to minus 140 is the buy price. I'm confident that's where it's going to come.
So first quarter under
7.5. Lay it up to minus $1.40.
So what's the logic?
Here's the logic. Cutler has cracked ribs. I'm not sure he's 100% recovered. What I saw was an extremely accurate quarterback. I was shocked by this against the Oakland Raiders that dinked and dunked all night long. Didn't throw down the field, just kept completing 4, 5, 6-yard passes. Wasn't effective to win the game, kept them in the game. But I expect because they were successful moving the ball that they will duplicate that and the clock will just keep moving and they'll pick up a couple first downs and punt. Further, if we look at Carolina, remember, Greg Olsen, the tight end for Carolina, he is out. He got for the year. Benjamin got traded, their number one breakaway wide receiver. So now Cam needs to be careful with the ball. They're a 9-point favorite. He wasn't careful against the Bears. Remember the 2 75-yard defensive touchdowns for the Bears. Take care of the ball. Don't turn it over. That means conservative early play.
So why first quarter? I mean, I guess you're saying early play. Why first quarter over the game?
I don't trust Cutler in the second half.
To throw pick sixes if he's behind?
Pick six down 10-13.
Okay. Cam Newton has been the leading rusher for Carolina 4 straight games. Think about that. The quarterback. And if you look at the other players, no other running player on the team is averaging more than 3 yards per carry. No other player on the team. So this Carolina team cannot run other than Cam. If you look at yards per play, Miami number 31 net, number 32 on offense, Carolina number 26 on offense. Net or yards per play, not net. So, man, oh man, these are not good offenses. And I think, like you said, there's motivation to be conservative, Fez. So that's his derivative bet under first quarter. 7.5 is the number, all the way up to minus 140. Correct?
Yes.
All right, guys. We're almost. Wow. We got one more game, and then we're into the smart money, the double likes, and the best bets. And one of them, remember, is a Crossfire. Do you think they went against me, or do you think they went against Fez? That's the question. Now, we've got a total game from Fez. Patriots, Broncos. We got right now the Pats on the road favored by 7.5. Let's look at the side first. Matty Holt, lean or like?
I lean Denver here, but I also played Denver on the Super Contest last week because that number was 8.5 instead of 7, so I took the value. But I don't know if this Denver defense is given up or not, but if they haven't, historically, New England has some trouble up there. They have trouble scoring up there. And I have to assume that the Denver offense is going to get better. You know, they just can't continue to play as bad as they have. And whether it's Brock Osweiler or Trevor Siemian, this was a really difficult game for me, but I lean Denver.
And the public is having no difficulty. 94% of the tickets, 95% of the cash on the Pats. You know, Fez, one of your best bets was Denver last week. You've had an amazing NFL season with your premium picks, but one of your best bets was Denver, and we were just playing wrong about it. They didn't get the pressure we thought against the Eagles. Osweiler wasn't an upgrade. Give me an assessment of, and I guess it segues to your total, Osweiler and what you're seeing with the Broncos.
No quarterback. Siemian can't play when he's injured. Osweiler can't play a lick. You don't have a quarterback.
So at this point, there's no upgrade with Osweiler.
I think it might be a downgrade.
Even from an injured Siemian.
About the same.
All right, give us the pick.
The pick, we're going to go on the total. We're going to go under the 46.5. You know, I look at this New England Patriots. I know their stats defensively are terrible, but their stats weren't that good last year defensively, RJ, and they were the number one scoring defense in the NFL. The last 4 weeks, they've held every opponent to 17 or fewer points. That included games against the Chargers and games against the Atlanta Falcons. If you can hold every one of your opponents to 17 or less, how are the Denver Broncos going to get 17 against you? And I'm not even sure the Patriots are going to cover because Denver still does have that awesome defense. And Denver's been great, that defense, against the Patriots.
You think that D is still as good as we thought?
I misspoke. No, it's not as good, but it's been great historically against New England. If there's one defense that's been able to stop New England, it's been the Denver defense. I think pride against the Super Bowl champs, they'll bring it in this game. It has underwritten all over it to me.
And whether it's altitude, noise, just home field factor, most teams do have a better yards per play allowed at home than on the road. Denver's is a half a full yard better at home, 4.5 yards per play allowed at home, 5.0 allowed on the road. So significantly better results defensively for Denver's defense at home.
Okay, I tend to agree with this one. And I think that's interesting because year to year in the NFL, I'm always leery because there's such turnover. But I think Denver's D, though they made a little schematic shift to be better against a run, is what I understand. And I go by experts I trust with that. A lot of consistency, I think, on the Pats side. I think the case could be made, and a good history with that Denver defense against the Pats. Under is the pick. Okay, so we've got let's think about this. Fez with the under, we got to lean towards Denver. And remember, we only allow Fez one total and Matty one total a week. So this is a one they feel real about. We are heading to the most actionable. Listen, we had a bonus best bet, an early best bet, but this is the home stretch with smart money, double likes, best bets, Crossfire. This is good stuff. First, though, guys, once again, we grew. Now, we're partners with Podcast One, the biggest podcast company in the world, and we were honored when they wanted us to participate with them. Adam Carolla, the biggest podcaster in the world. I'm on with Adam every Wednesday. Had a perfect 2-0 week. Adam's been giving me some heat. You know, he's a comedian. I don't know, Fez, if you know that. He tries to be funny. Well, Adam's been trying to, he joked because I went 1-1, and he goes, RJ Bell, the Associated Press official odds provider, blah, 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 blah. And like a coin, 50%. So, you know, trying to be funny, but perfect 2-0 week. I wasn't too hard on him. I hit him a little bit. I can't lie, but I wasn't too hard on him. But here's what's super exciting about all this. There's hundreds of podcasts on Podcast One. The Dream Preview NFL Edition is one of the 20 biggest podcasts right now on Podcast One. Think about that. 100 plus thousand a week listening. Amazing, guys. And we grew again last week, and that means I owe you, as Rodney would say. Here's the coupon. So what do you do with this coupon? If you want Fezzik's best bets, you want anyone's best bets in the NFL, go to pregame.com, click buy picks, look around, select something in your shopping cart, and then there's an area for discount for coupon, and you use NFL Dream 13. It's all caps. NFL Dream, the number 1, the number 3, get $13 off. Fez, how much is your Sunday best bet package?
$24.
So that means, let me do the math, $11. They can get all your best bets.
We're kind of like selling 99-cent hamburgers, RJ. How are we going to make any money?
I don't know. You worry about that. I'm worried about the people. All right. I'm worried. But how do we keep growing every week, guys? It's tweet out the pod. It's tell your friends. Now, listen, if your friends don't gamble, don't tell them. But if they're interested in gambling, why wouldn't they be interested if you are? At least it's worth a listen. And even if you don't do that, or if you want to do a little bit more, we don't care if you buy anything. If you want to buy, buy. If you don't, don't. If you don't want to buy, don't buy. But if you want to buy, you might as well get a discount. But if you're not buying, do us a favor. Share it or go into iTunes and rate us. We are a 5-star podcast with hundreds of ratings. And I tell you, I take that very seriously. I'm so proud of that. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the growth. And now the stakes are going up. This is Smart Money Game number 1. Giants, 49ers. Line opened up with the 49ers favored. Now the Giants are favored. Smart Money Game on the Giants. So let's get this straight. The smart money's on the Giants. Fez, lean or like?
I lean San Francisco here. I'm on the square side.
But remember, guys, we don't hit them with Huey unless it's a like.
You know, and really what it was is I don't think I evaluated the injuries properly for San Francisco. I got San Francisco.
So you're reconsidering?
I'm reconsidering because there's been so much money, and I look at the injury report. Maddie's probably got it locked and loaded over there. The San Francisco, they're not the 49ers anymore. They're just a bunch of backups.
Well, but if you're one of the worst teams in the league anyway, are the replacements that much worse is the question. Matty, lean or like?
I mean, we always talk about, hey, what's the key factor for every game? It's one of the things we discussed before we started. My key factor for the San Francisco 49ers, 20 players listed on the injury report this week. That's a big factor. Look, the New York Giants defense hasn't been very good this year, you know, for all the hype they got last year, but they've been a lot worse at home than on the road. 5.9 yards per play allowed on the road, only 5.7 yards per play allowed at home. And I think this Giants team overall is just the better football team. And even if not for all the injuries at this point, San Francisco is decimated. And I don't understand this Jimmy Garoppolo thing. Let's trade for him, but keep him on the bench all year. I don't have much.
So what exactly are you hearing about that? About Garoppolo and when he's expected
I'm hearing
to play?
A lot of mixed reports about it, actually, that maybe he could play in a couple weeks from now, or maybe they're just going to sit him on the bench for the whole season. But if you're not going to audition him, Why the heck did you trade for him?
Because they're gonna whatever I don't know how it's called, franchise, or there's different ways to do it.
You're gonna franchise him without ever seeing him play a game in your offense.
I think what they're gonna do is this, and to me, this is the driver in this game that's taking me off San Fran. My first thought was San Fran because I love winless teams. You know they're motivated. And I love winless teams that lost a lot of close games. And San Fran lost 5 straight by a field goal or less, but they've been horrible since then. And to me, when they went away from Hoyer, who, let's be candid, 3-year contract with the Pats, now obviously a backup, but this Hoyer wasn't horrible. Here's the question, and this is something Fez and I were talking about on the phone a couple days ago, is I have a new way to think about these horrible teams. And I actually talked about this. Now I think about it. We talked about this also on the Dream Preview College edition. It's a good time to talk about that. If you bet college and you're not listening, just go to Podcast One, search for RJ Bell, go to iTunes, search for it, go to my Twitter at RJ in Vegas, and the college comes out on Wednesday, NFL on Thursday. And Fez, you sat in on the college this week. A lot of good stuff, Crossfire, et cetera, et cetera. Matty, tell me what you think of this, because you probably haven't heard it yet. I'm going to eliminate every team that has a incompetent quarterback. Now, what does incompetent mean? Now, actually my best bet goes against this, but it's so much value. I'm going to almost eliminate every team with an incompetent quarterback, defined as it's not reasonable they throw for 300 yards once every 10 games. Yeah, Brady's going to throw, whatever, 3, 4, 5 out of 10. I'm saying if this guy throws 1 out of 10, you'd be surprised. I don't want to bet this team. What's the chance that the 49ers quarterback's going to throw for 300 yards?
What are the chances that either do in this game?
Well, I think Manning's chances are much higher. I mean, maybe possibly not great, right?
I mean, unfortunately for Manning, the receiving core is so decimated that they're in trouble too. But I do agree that I would be much more surprised if C.J. Beathard threw for 300 yards this week than maybe every other quarterback not named Deshaun Kaiser in the league.
I don't like you saying that. I can't lie. All right. You'll know in a few minutes. But here's my question. And we were talking about this. The old school sharps were like the old school investors, the Warren Buffetts that wanted value. They wanted that last puff on the cigar, as we were talking about yesterday. It seems like the new school sharps won't play the worst teams. You take the biggest bets in Las Vegas behind the counter, literally the biggest. What have you seen? What's different between the 33-year-old computer algorithm guy and the number of really horrible teams he takes because there's quote unquote value? And how would you compare them to the old school cigar chompers that were always looking for the worst teams?
So it depends. A lot of the younger guys love model building more than ever. Like if you would have talked about model building as like a hobby or an exercise 10 years ago, people would have been like, what do you mean? Planes, cars, model what? Trains? Now there's a group of people that's what they do as hobbies. They build models. They like to do it. It's fun. It's interactive. Then they want to put it to the ultimate litmus test. So we're seeing it more than more, and unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, these teams are going to end up on that report sometimes as value because public perception is Cleveland so bad, San Fran so bad, that they do end up there. We actually see quite a bit of money on the Niners and Cleveland throughout the season from younger bettors.
Okay, but the question is...
we have a young bettor. He's in his mid-30s. He's one of our biggest bettors. He bets 6 figures an NFL game, period. And college football, and he can basically bet whatever games he wants with 6 figures per bet. And he
big winner.
No, he's let's call him close to even guy.
Okay,
high volume.
So why are we
player,
worried about him?
Because he fits that mold of younger 30.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the guys that really win, that are the newer, younger. And it's not even about young.
I was going to say, I don't know how many 20-year-olds win.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. So I guess here's my question. It's my belief that every week, if you go with the old school, that you look at the 5 worst teams in the league, that they're going to bet at least 3 of those every week. Do you feel like the maybe it's not 20 something, maybe it's the early 40s guys?
I do feel like that has changed a bit. There has been a move away from the very, very bottom of the barrel teams being bet every week, like what we saw last year with Cleveland and Jacksonville from the Sharps. Every single week they were on Cleveland.
I'm not saying some Sharps aren't betting these teams every week. I'm saying the best of the best are throwing out. It feels like the best of the best are losing maybe a third of these stinker games, and those third are 50% at best. Fez, what do you think?
I agree. I think, look at last year. Money came every week on the Jets and the Cleveland Browns. Every week they didn't cover, but that was selective money. I think some of the guys were still following the 20-year trends. Hey, I'm taking double digits blindly almost on the worst teams, whereas other guys said, you know what, I'm going to be a little bit more advanced than that. I'm not getting the point spread value I got back in 2006. I'm passing.
And to me, the driver is if you don't have a decent quarterback, it's almost hard to think you're getting value if the quarterback isn't competent. Okay, guys, anything to close on this game? So we had smart money on the Giants. Injuries is what we think is driving it. Oh, I had one more comment.
Another big home away bias here. San Francisco 49ers yards per play on the season allowed. On the road, 5.0 yards per play allowed. That's pretty good. 5.9 yards per play allowed at home this season. That's almost 6 yards a play.
I'm leery about that when the sample is so small because strength of schedule is so important. I hear you.
The sample's small overall in a season.
I know, but it's half as small when it's home road splits, right? Here's what I think is why I'm off the 49ers. Injuries and also this. The teams give us cues. And the team themselves hear and acknowledge those cues from the front office, from the coaching staff. What's the 49ers telling us by not rushing in Jimmy G? They're telling us we're okay going 1-15 this year. We wouldn't mind the first pick in the draft, and we can trade for a bunch. Or maybe we pick. I mean, imagine, and this is what Seattle did. Remember, Russell Wilson wasn't supposed to be the quarterback, but they drafted him in the second round, and they signed – I'm having a mental block. It was Flynn, was it? They signed the Packers quarterback. And if you look at what the Bears...
Who was supposed to be the starter, Matt Flynn, yes.
What I'm saying is, would it be crazy for the 49ers to take the top pick on the draft on a quarterback, to franchise Jimmy G, understand for 1 year you're going to have a lot of money in quarterbacks, and at the end of that first year, if Jimmy G is really good... You let that you trade the first round pick, and if Jimmy G isn't, you don't pay him after next year.
The problem with that theory is you never get adequate value back for that number one draft pick. So
if they lay an egg, but what happens if Jimmy G's a 9 out of 10 and this quarterback's an 8 out of 10? You don't think they're going to trade the heck out? I mean, if
how do you know the second quarterback's an 8 out of 10? You're going to play them both equally every game?
Well, no, but the beauty of it is no one really knows.
Compare it on preseason?
Yeah, but no one knows. They're going to be drafting off. That's an interesting point, right? Is if Aaron Rodgers, now I know this was a different era, right? But Aaron Rodgers didn't play his first year. What was he, the 20th pick? I mean, he was certainly in the second half of the first round. Right? Everyone was shocked that they, Brett Favre, and they picked this quarterback. If they try to trade Aaron Rodgers after year one, do you think they would have had trouble getting back the same value as the way they draft, the 20th pick or whatever?
I think it's hard. I think it's easy to say that now, but I think it's hard to unbiasedly go back and look at Aaron Rodgers and pretend that we don't know he's the great Aaron Rodgers. And, hey, do we all remember what the public perception was of Aaron Rodgers sitting on the bench year one? No one was talking about him at all. I don't know. I can't recall if there was a good perception about him.
I agree, but I think in general...
Let's use more recent terms. What first-round draft pick quarterback the last couple of years is sitting on a bench somewhere that you can get value for?
Jimmy G. The pick they're getting for Jimmy G is better. Now think about that. When they draft, one of the things that makes draft choice so valuable is that cheap contract for X number of years.
Agreed.
So Jimmy G now has a half a season left on a cheap contract, and they got a high second round pick. And when they drafted Jimmy G, it was at the end of the second round. So they had a cheap quality backup for all those years, and now they're trading him in for something better, and he played a game and a half. Now, some of that's love of Belichick, right? But I think unless if a quarterback lays a total egg, then you lose it. But it's going to be a loser anyway if you didn't have Garoppolo and you pick a quarterback number one, they lay a total egg, you're losing a ton. So, or maybe they don't draft number one. Maybe they sign Cousins, And they keep Jimmy G for a year and figure, let them bat. Who knows? All I'm saying is, I think what we're seeing is Jimmy G this year is not going to play very much, which means they have longer term perspectives on him, which means they're telling this team, we don't mind not winning.
But do you think you can get enough of an audition in practice to know whether Jimmy G's our guy we want to keep or not? Because the problem with Jimmy G is you have to pay him in the offseason.
No, it's for 1 year, though, if you franchise him.
That's $27 million.
I know.
You can't sign Kirk Cousins and franchise Jimmy G. You can't have 58 to 60 million in quarterbacks.
And you make a good point. Prior to the practice changes, you could find out a lot more about backups. From what I hear now, with less practice time, it's even harder.
It's so hard to evaluate quarterbacks. I was just reading articles about Hundley before Rodgers got hurt, how they were shopping him, and there was a ton of interest in people trading to get him as their starting quarterback.
Well, I think that's changed. Just like our best bet on the Packers last week. I think we all like that one. All right, next smart money game. And then we've got a double like and two best bets. One of them a crossfire, if you can believe it. Jets, Tampa Bay. Jets favored on the road by 2.5 against Tampa. Smart money on the Jets. By the way, the public is on the smart side. 89% of the cash, 85% of the tickets. By the way, you go to pregame.com, click on Game Center, click the consensus tab. You can see the bet split on every game, every sport, cash and tickets. Only place in the world the cash is available for free. Only place in the world. All right, guys, we've got to be honest a second. You thought the Jets, it's time for a little accounting. You thought the Jets were the worst team of the last 10 years entering the season, right or wrong?
Right.
All right. Now, what did you get wrong?
They have a good quarterback. McCown, you could make the case, is one of the four most important players in the NFL, because if he went down, then Bryce Petty would have to take over. And the team has played so hard for Coach Bowles, trying to win each and every game and playing maximum motivation.
And I think finally, because the Bills was the other team you were thinking might be dumping, I think it's time that we remember for next year, these teams don't dump.
Well, I was partially correct, I think, in some ways.
What?
I said New York.
You
was
said the Jets.
I said New York was going to dump this year, and I think when we watch the Giants in December, we'll see that.
They're going to dump their coach. All right. So we know the sharps are on the Jets. Tampa is in free fall, it seems. Matty Holt, lean or like?
Lean Tampa Bay. And for me, I couldn't get over my power rating differential, so I send out my numbers the week ahead of time. I made this line like 5.75, which is like just shy of 6. It'd be like 6 even or 5.5 minus 20. And the problem was, so now from 5.5 to 2.5, which is 8 points. That was with Jameis Winston in and Mike Evans in. But are Mike Evans and Jameis Winston worth 8 points? Absolutely not. So I don't think it. I still think there's a little power rating value alone in it. And in a game where I don't have an opinion, the power rating has to dictate that opinion. I still lean Tampa Bay.
To me, so what's the downgrade? We'll start with you, Matty, between Winston and Fitzpatrick.
So we sent 5.5 Tampa. So from 5.5 Tampa, which was going to be a consensus power rating. You know, we share power ratings with other people. It was going to be a consensus. You know, maybe it was going to be 5 or 4.5, but it was going to be at least 4.5 to 5.5, the opener with Tampa. And now no Winston, no Evans. It's up to 2.5 the other way. Some of that steam, granted, but at 7 or 8 points, 7 minimum, 8, you know, at least maybe 8 for those two players. At some point, it's beyond what those two players, I think, are worth, the adjustment.
So that's interesting. So, Fez, if we said Winston to Fitzpatrick, I would say we're looking at 2.5 or 3 points.
If Winston was healthy, but his ACL injury to his shoulder never healed completely and got re-aggravated, it's not even clear who the better quarterback is. It's pretty comparable. Injured Winston versus a healthy Fitzpatrick.
So you're saying, Matty, that Tampa would have been favored by 4.5?
Yes.
4.5 was a real number on the look-ahead line that I saw.
Yeah, it was. It was the real number.
Early line.
Yeah.
So what the heck's going on here?
You tell me.
That's why I lean Tampa.
I think.
Why don't you love Tampa?
Well, I don't love not having Mike Evans, and I don't love Ryan Fitzpatrick, who throws as many interceptions per start as any quarterback since I've been watching football.
And Mike Evans is like A.J. Green. He's literally the under-the-radar most important wide receiver for any team. You can talk about Tampa having O.J. Howard, having the kid from Philadelphia, but he's the straw that stirs the drink on that offense.
Deshaun Jackson.
So, Matty, we never know for sure if the sharp money is dumbing up the game. It's going to come back later. But you have looked at this money pouring in for years and years. Do you get any sense on the Jets? Is this a real position, or are they trying to dummy up the game?
So there are still a couple of syndicates out there, and this happens with a few of the major syndicates, that when they release early plays, they get steamed. They hit them, and then the steam comes behind them. And that one of those groups hit the Jets earlier.
Now, how often is that initial money legit, and how often are they buying it back later?
Well, that's debatable. That's something I don't really.
Yeah.
I don't have the actual figures, so I don't want to speculate. But there certainly is some buyback, yes, and I have no idea in this case whether it was a legit move on the Jets or not. And look, it looks like a great number, laying Jets to pick them now anyway. But now it's steamed up to 2.5, as a lot of people have jumped on board here, and I think it's a little too much of an overreaction to the Evans and Winston injuries.
So, Fez, you only lean Tampa. Why not like them?
Because I'm waiting for 3, and then I will like them. This game,
but here's the thing, and let's define this. We are assuming with these picks that you either bet now or you don't bet. I'm not. So you can say I like it here, but I think it's going up, and I'm going to wait. But assume you have one chance to bet. There's a sports book, we won't bash them too hard or at all, that will only let you bet. It's one of the biggest in town. You can only bet once a day. If you walk in at noon and bet, you can't come back at midnight and bet, right? So assume this. He's nodding. He won't even say yes. He doesn't want to have yes on
I'm a
tape.
restricted bettor. Yes.
When Fez is dealing with books,
peace and love, peace and love.
So let's assume this is the one time. If you don't bet the Jets, the Bucks plus 2.5 minus 105 is what we've showing. You can't ever bet it. Do you bet it?
I do. I'm heading to McCarran in 1 hour. I got to get my bets down now. I absolutely bet it. This game is equivalent to last week.
So let's get this straight, though. So the sharp money's on the Jets, and I just baited you into liking Tampa. We weren't going to hit him with Huey, and I salvaged it.
It's the same game as Atlanta, Carolina last week. Sure, all the money came in on Atlanta plus 2, and it was plenty smart when it got to Carolina catching 2.5 and even 3 eventually, but even at 2.5, Carolina was a good sports investment.
Matty, the sharpest move of the whole pod was that. Let's be honest.
That was pretty slick, because I wasn't sure we were going to get one all show.
All right, guys.
I feel like I should take half of that one for Fez. I mean, I would go bet it right now too.
All right, good stuff, guys. You know, I would too probably, but at 3 for sure. I mean, man, I know Winston and the whole, I'm having a mental block. The thing in the preseason where they follow him around.
Hard
knocks. That's it. Yeah. There's a lot of premium often on those teams. But I mean, this Winston.
Well, coming off a 10-win season, yeah.
I mean, you got to wonder if he's in the league in a couple years. I mean,
when he's healthy, he has shown that he can throw the football with.
So we think this is about injury.
I think some of it
he was even banged up before he's out.
I think some of it is because he actually last year you saw he got into really good shape. He was chubby coming out of college. He got into tremendous football shape. And when he's healthy, he can really whip
seafood.
it.
If you steal that seafood, it puts some weight on. Next game, this is our one double like, and it's actually me liking with Fez. It's Steelers. It's Colts. Steelers favored by 10 on the road. Fez, who do you like?
I like the Colts. I like everything about this game. The Steelers are not a buttoned-up type team. They're on a long winning streak. They're on a bye week. They're probably partying in Cancun, having a great time until Tuesday of this week. Contrast that with the Colts. Yes, they've been terrible. Yes, they have a very bad defense, but Brissett is playing much better for this team. They do have a capable starting quarterback, and that was evidenced by the fact that they should have won at Cincinnati, gave the game away at the very end, and they also won the game at Houston as a 6-point underdog, so they're in a home momentum situation. Love the Colts catching 10. This number's got to drop before kickoff.
All right, so you would say bet early. Even though, and this could be a public pounder too, 89% of the tickets on Pittsburgh.
Yeah, one $100,000 bet's going to wipe out that public.
So, Matt, if you had to guess, where does this line close? Well, how's this sound? I'm going to give my analysis, and then you can give your bet. Here's what's driving this to me. Tomlin, it's pretty much assess motivation, and if there's a chance for the team to be flat, they're probably going to be flat. This stat is amazing. The entire NFL since 2006, other than the Pittsburgh Steelers, when they're favored on the road by 9 points or more, 65-10 straight up. One tie, one actual tie. 65-10 straight up. The Pittsburgh Steelers in that same time, favored by 9 points or more on the road, 6-5 straight up. So literally a third of the league's losses as a 9-point or bigger favorite is the 5 from Pittsburgh. The rest of the league only has 10 in the last decade. So it's once a year a team will lose favored this much, and Pittsburgh does it every other year. I mean, it's a bad situation. And to me, I think this Pittsburgh team probably has I think Pittsburgh playing their best is better than the Eagles. But this is not a spot for them to be their best. Matty, where do you think the line goes?
I think it's probably going to stay around 10. I think the public's going to stay on Pittsburgh, and I think some of the sharp money is going to stay away from this game. We talked about Pittsburgh's offense being underwhelming and underperforming for weeks and weeks and weeks to open the season, but the last 3 weeks, which is the last 3 games, which is the last 4 weeks for Pittsburgh, 6.5 yards per play on offense, second best in the NFL in that span, behind only the New Orleans Saints, who are 6.6. So you've been waiting for that Pittsburgh offense to explode, and on paper, last 3 games, last 4 weeks, it finally has.
Okay, any closing thoughts, Fez?
No, I think we covered it.
Actually, looking at the notes here, Matty, you've got your second derivative on this game. You have your second derivative, a bonus one on this baby.
So I actually like, and this is a prop we offer on all the ISO TV games. You can find it readily available somewhere if you shop just a little bit, is will there be a successful 2-point conversion in this game? And the odds are normally between no minus 360 and no minus 420. Let's just call it in the middle, like no minus 390. Let's say you can get 3-1 on this. No one tries for more 2-point conversions in the NFL than the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you tend to get more 2-point conversions in games with big spreads, because as the spread gets larger, you have games that land on 11. So you have a team going for 2, stuck 11, or stuck 16. So you tend to get more in games with bigger variances and bigger spreads anyway. I think at 3-1, there's a little value. At 3-1 or better, there's a little value in betting the yes on will there be a successful 2-point conversion in this game.
Faz, agree, disagree?
I agree strongly, because Tomlin loves to go for 2. It'd be even better if Indy was at Pittsburgh with the bad weather, because we'd miss an extra point more likely, which makes a 2-point conversion more likely.
Double like on the Colts, me and Faz. 2 games left, 2 best bets.
Don't know about the future, that's anybody's guess. Ain't no good reason for getting all depressed. Fire up your pad and pencil, I give you a piece of my mind.
All right, guys, best bet time. Sponsored by Blossom. Okay. Have you looked up Blossom yet, Matty?
No, I haven't.
Write it down. Look it up. You're going to have a little crush on her, I think.
Okay.
I don't know if that's even fair to say, because in the 90s, it was okay for me to have a crush on her. I think she was like maybe 15 on the show. So maybe just like affection might be the right way to say it. Moving on. Best bet. My best bet. I swore I wasn't going to bet the Browns. I'm betting the Browns. I gave it to Corolla, and I love this game. I mean, this is the stat of stats. Now, we all know, and it's important, that 0-4 teams or worse, and when I say we all, everyone that listens closely to the Dream Preview, if you're 0-4 or worse, you hit about 56% of the time just playing that team blindly the last 30 years because the public hates 0-win teams, and thus there's just extra value on them. But check this out. If a team is 0-5 or worse, and they have 10 days rest or more, so a bye obviously falls into that, they are, and I don't have my notes, but I'm almost sure this is the exact number. If it's not, it's off by one game. They're 18-3 against the spread. So think about that. The team is deep enough into the season that it's like, oh my God, you haven't won a game yet. You've got 2 weeks. Are you partying like you said the Steelers were, Fez?
All I'm doing is listening to talk radio and people telling me how much I stink.
The coach's job's on the line. I mean, you're never going to get a fever pitch like this. And 18-3, you just don't. That's too much logic. I mean, 18-3 is one thing against the spread, but the pure logic of that. And then you think about what was the look-ahead line in this game? Like 9?
So here's what it comes to for me in this game, and you just said it. And I can never ignore these kind of value plays. I could have laid 9 with Detroit at 3:30 p.m. Monday afternoon. Then after the Monday night game is played, suddenly I have to lay 12.5. And obviously Cleveland didn't get worse. They didn't play. Detroit did not get 3.5 points better Monday night. Not to mention it's a short week. This is a massive overreaction. I get 3 points better the number off of one win for Detroit. I'll always take the value there.
I agree. And this Detroit team, I think, is overrated. Off that, it's a short week, off that Monday night win, and they can't run the ball. Check this out. Detroit against Green Bay. Now, they were winning. They should be able to run a little bit, right? 33 rushes for 64 yards, 1.9 yards a rush. Week before against Pittsburgh, 2.6 yards per rush. And then they haven't had more than 3.5 yards per rush in any game since week 3. Week 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there's a bye in there, I think, is the idea that you can't, the league average is what, 4.1 now, Fez?
Yep.
And they can't get over 3.5 in one game?
They can't even get one on the goal line. It's been a point of emphasis for Detroit to run the ball in the red zone. Anyone who watched the Steeler game and anyone who watched the Monday night game knows they could not punch it in. They're kicking field goals from the 1 yard line.
So let's say they get up 14, right? So we're in trouble. We got to get a back door. You figure Detroit either just out of practicality is going to want to run, or they're going to want to make a statement and establish that, like, hey, now's the time to get us running well. That shortens the game, and their ineffectiveness, I think, opens the door to the back door.
I agree strongly. And also, breaking news, A.J. McCarron is going to quarterback both teams on Sunday. What does the line do? I would make the case Cleveland is going to be laying 7. So I know Kaiser is terrible. I know Stafford is a gunslinger, but he's probably not going to be slinging in the second half. Is there a 19-point disparity between those two guys? If there is, then the line is fair.
So, guys, this is actually a triple like, because before they knew this was my best bet, Fezzik had the like, Matty had the like on this game, and then I made it my best bet. So more than a triple like. And remember, no game's better than 55%. So don't go crazy. It's hard to win. It's hard to win. Matty, any one last thought? It was more of a conversation than a presentation. Give me one other factor in this game, and same for you, Faz. Matty first.
Look, for as bad as Cleveland's offense has been this year, this defense has been ranked in the upper half all season long and currently stands at number 8 in the season-long yards per play allowed stat. That's pretty solid.
Fez.
I've already used my derivative bet, but I'm going to use another one. I would bet Cleveland to get more first downs, plus 3.5, plus 4, or more yards, anywhere way you can get at the stats instead of betting on the team, because it's possible Kaiser could throw 2 pick sixes to train wreck our bet.
So it's a way to get at the fact the Browns aren't this overmatched while while removing the fact that Kaiser is a disaster.
Exactly. And usually when I bet this sort of bet, I like who's going to get more first downs. The Browns are going to be getting +4 as a 12-point dog.
It almost makes me want to just sprinkle half the bet, and that's more than a sprinkle, on the money line. Because in a weird way, you think, oh, big underdog is great with any team, but Kaiser throwing from behind is the last thing you want. Maybe just kind of hope that 1 out of X times they're going to spring the upset.
Nothing wrong with diversifying. Sprinkle here, sprinkle there.
All right, guys, before we get to the very last best bet, first time ever. So it's Fez's best bet, and someone's going to crossfire on it. First time ever that's happened. And you know it's not me. I'm not dumb enough to crossfire against Fez. It's Matty Holt. Matty, you already gave your best bet, so give us your Twitter handle.
At Matthew Holt VP.
VP, that sounds impressive, doesn't it? He shows up in a jacket to the pregame.com offices. All right, Fez, there's one game left. It's your best bet. Let's hear what Al Pacino has to say about best bets.
What are you doing? Wiseguy don't carry his money in a wallet. Hey, Wiseguy carries money in a roll.
All right, you know you're betting this one. Now, I'm not going to play the crossfire music until Matty starts his rebuttal. No jumping in, Matty. Full presentation for Fez.
Let's go to the Windy City here. Chicago Bears, I have them rated 3.5 points worse than an average team. Frankly, I think I've got them undervalued, RJ. They have been a commodity we knew would be a bet-on team going into the year. We talked about it, how their stats were good in 2016. They had a -20 turnover differential that sandbagged them last year. They had a bad turnover differential this year. Now that Trubisky has taken over, there's a lot of swagger for these Bears. And the key here to this handicap is they played so well at home. They have the most difficult schedule in the NFL, their home schedule. They've had to play Atlanta, Pittsburgh, Minnesota, and Carolina. 4 teams contending for playoff berths. They won 2 of the games easily. They lost 2 close games. And you could make the case they really should have beat Atlanta. This is a team that hasn't had much of a home field advantage, especially when they play the Packers, who descend upon Chicago and take over the stadium. That's not going to be happening this year, as bad as the Packers are. My power rating for the Bears, I've got them 4.5 points better than a Hundley-led Green Bay team. I'm going to give them 3 for home field. That has my number in this game at 7.5, and its little brother's been kicked around by the Packers for years. It's payback time. Nothing they would want more than to step on the throat of the hated Packers.
Professional bet there. Best bet. Matty Holt, crossfire.
So we just talked about value here with Cleveland, how we could have laid 9 or with Detroit on Monday, but all of a sudden these people are going to lay 12 just a few hours later. Well, the same thing is happening here, folks. This line was Chicago -3 at 3:45 p.m. Monday, 3:45 p.m. Pacific time, Monday afternoon here in Las Vegas. Yet just a day later, I'm going to go out and lay 6. Why? Because Green Bay didn't get it done at home against another little brother with a chip on their shoulder, and the Detroit Lions. Look, this is do or die for Brett Hundley as a quarterback, because if he lays another egg here, he's done. He's not coming back. He's not going to get another chance to be a starter. Look, everyone talks about the swagger that the Chicago Bears have since Mitch Trubisky took over. Their offense has been putrid. Their offense scored 3 points at home against the Carolina Panthers. They are averaging 4 yards per play on offense since Mitch Trubisky took over. Expect this to be a low-scoring game. And as we all talk about, points become more value in a low-scoring game. Most importantly, why are we giving away the field goal from Monday?
Fez, return fire.
Yeah, let's talk about those other little brother, the Detroit Lions. You mentioned that similar situation.
Well, I told you they would win in Green Bay earlier this year,
and they
did.
Kicked the living daylights out of this team and did not let up when they had the ball on the goal line with a minute and a half to go. Did they just take a knee? No! They punched it in again because they hate the Packers, who had beaten them 24 out of 25. It was payback time. It'll be payback time now for the Bears to get their payback.
I think you guys might have got a little too theatrical. Like you were going staccato to the music. Yeah. I love it, though. I say this a bunch, but I love disagreement because it's honest. And if you watch those old shows and the pros, quote unquote, would be like, well, that's very smart, Kelso. Well, thank you, Mr. Feist. It's not what you get here. Best bets are not sacred, and you get to choose because it's your money. All right, guys, last thing let me make a comment on this game. I agree with both of you in this way. I think the Packers are horrible. And if I had to lean, I'm leaning to the Bears because, Matty, I think there's a flaw in your thinking. We were talking about Detroit versus Cleveland and the line changing 3 points or whatever. And your point would be, what did we really learn? We didn't learn much from Detroit beating Green Bay. But I think in the rare cases where you really learn something, then big line moves make sense, right? In college football, where we don't have a good feel for teams, Fez, you will move your power ratings 3 points or so all the time, right? Off of one game.
Look at your Buckeyes last week.
Like you said, you guys moved them, downgraded them 4.5.
Right.
Okay. So, Matty, my point would be this. Didn't we learn a massive amount about the Packers that Hundley just, like if there was any situation Hundley was going to play well, it was off a bye.
And I thought he came out playing well. They started that game on an 8-minute, 20-second drive all the way down the field that was a missed chip shot field goal that as soon as that chip shot field goal got half blocked and missed, they all hung their heads and you might as well have said game over.
All right, and let's wrap it. But I think that in general, being suspect of big line moves in a week is smart unless you feel like you've learned so much. And I think maybe with the Pack, we've learned Hundley. I know my pocketbook learned because I bet the Pack Hundley is not a professional level quarterback. All right, guys, that's it. Remember, College Football Dream preview. Also, though, we do the Thursday game bonus, a little 4 or 5 minute baby. We'll be looking at that Thursday game. You can get this week's Thursday NFL. You can get that bonus on my Twitter at RJ in Vegas. Talk to you there.
Thanks for listening to RJ Bell's Dream Preview. Catch the Wiseguy Roundtable each week. College football released on Wednesday, NFL on Thursday. Don't miss any winners. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Visit podcast1.com and download the Podcast One app. Have a question for RJ? You can contact him directly on Twitter at RJ in Vegas. Live the dream with us each week.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
What's going on, man?
Hi, Guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the team, Loveline, man. You guys remember us from back in the day? Well, we're doing a pod, and we're doing it every day.
And we've been doing it for a while, and if I hear one more time people saying, God, I loved you and Adam together on Loveline, and I'm like, yeah, we're doing a podcast. Will you please just join us at the Adam and Dr. Drew Show, please? At AdamandDrDrewShow.com. It's a great show. Come on now. Only on Podcast One. That's us, Adam and Dr. Drew Show. Just like the old days.
Doctor's orders.
Oh, man, you're funny.
Yep. All right, let's go save some babies.
Let's do it.
Now on Podcast One Sports, it's a family affair with Jim Harbaugh, Jack Harbaugh, and JT Rogan on Attack Each Day, the Harbaugh's podcast.
We're going to attack this day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind.
Hear incredible stories from one of the greatest voices of our time on Sound of Success, the Dick Enberg podcast.
Oh, my.
And guess who's talking America's favorite basketball team?
Hey, it's Jay Moore, and it is time for America's Lakers podcast.
All this and much more exclusively on Podcast One Sports. Listen on Apple Podcasts, the new Podcast One app, and where else, Jay?
Podcast1.com.